All right, thanks for joining us, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Today, we're going to be talking about the Global Safe Summit and some of the key insights and learnings that we gathered from it last week. We're going to go ahead and talk about the agenda for today. So first, we'll be going through a quick round of introductions. Then we'll hop right into some of the content and talk about what we learned and some of the insights from the summit. We're going to do a quick target process solution summary, and then we'll leave it open for questions and discussion at the end. If you have any questions throughout the demonstration today, please just put them in the chat and we will address them. You can also raise your hand if you'd like to be unmuted, and we can unmute you and you can chime into the discussion. All right, so we have Mark Dabian from our Enterprise Solution Engineering team. He's going to be providing you with the summary today, and we'll be doing some discussion with he and Jurjen. Jurjen van der Laan, who's our Enterprise Agile coach and one of our product specialists here. And then myself, my name is Nick Horstman, and I'm Director of Business Development. So let's go ahead and jump right into the content that we have planned for today. Jurjen and Mark, the first question is what we learned, some of the customer challenges that we saw at the summit around visibility, visualization, dependencies, remote working, and scaling Agile. So do we want to go ahead and hop in?
Sure. Mark, I think you talked to a couple of customers coming to the booth. What were they worried about?
Yeah, for us, there was a couple of big challenges. I mean, the number one is really our ability to scale at a higher level. So, you know, we've got the team level figured out, and you know, they're doing pretty well there to team, but they really wanted to know how can we do a higher level budgeting, and how can we bring that you know, that planning to a you know, and making that planning effort a little bit easier, and ways to go ahead and do that. So that was one of the big things that came up, as well as our ability to do visualizations of that data and see it more smoothly.
Yeah, I watched a couple of sessions, and there were sessions about how to launch an art, giving COVID times or pandemic times, how to do remote PI planning. So there's a lot of content and questions currently about now that everybody's working at home, or working at home mostly, how do we do everything remote, and how do we still collaborate in a meaningful way?
Perfect.
So I think that is where the some of the tool vendors, of course, they're jumping on that, making solutions to address those concerns. And I think that later on we'll show a bit about it as well.
Anything else to add around customer challenges, Mark?
I think another one is still around doing those assessments and your ability to actually track and manage those. So you know, knowing where you are, taking a health check of where everything is. You know, if you know where you're, you know, where you're strong and where your weaknesses are, from as an organization level, or as a team level, or as a train level, and you know, you're able to go ahead and correct and fix those. But if you don't take that overall health check and know where you are, or be able to measure that, it becomes a little bit more difficult for you to go ahead and do that. Was another one of the things that I know I got out of a couple of the sessions that I attended.
Yes, correct. It was also part of one of the sessions which was about Safe Enterprise. That is where you get a kind of an enterprise subscription onto the Scaled Agile framework, and it includes quarterly health checks to measure how you are progressing with your whole Agile transformation.
Yeah, and I think that topic's a good segue into our next item that we have to discuss, which is around partnerships and training. So a lot of the partners that we work with are some of the top Agile consultants, especially around SAFE in the market. They do a lot of the value stream mapping, the assessments. They can really come in and help organizations figure out what they're struggling with and where they can spend a lot of the time improving as they start to scale across the enterprise. Did either of you have a chance to interact with any of our partners while we were there?
This is Mark again. So I spent a little bit of time talking to them. I know we got on a couple of partner Zoom calls as well. And one of the big things that we heard was people really need to continue the type of training that they're doing. So I know our partners help us a lot with the SBC training, and we've got a lot of SBCTs that we partner with that can go ahead and do those SBC classes. But I think in general, the knowledge and their ability to learn better ways to do safe or even follow some of the new things that are coming in. I think it was very much on the top of the minds of the partners that I talked to, and I know they've been spending a lot of time scheduling up those classes, making sure they get people into that training. And I think that a well-trained team is what they were telling us, is that a well-trained team really understands and gets why we're doing certain things, why it is important to organize the 2-day PI planning session in such a way, or what are some of the tips and tools that we can use for remote PI planning when we're doing that, and separately, and how can we keep engaged, and a lot of that is just knowing what that process is and being able to walk through it. So that was one of the big learnings that I got, in addition to just getting general help on your transformations. When it's the first time you're doing it, or maybe it's just your second PI going through something, having someone there to help walk you through that. And I learned that when I was a customer as well, is very helpful. So having that expert, having that person that can help watch you as a neutral party, and be able to walk you through the ceremonies that we're doing, the seminars, the sessions, being able to coach us along the way and watch it. I found it to be very helpful for a good PI planning and execution session.
Yeah, you saw that there was a session about where Scaled Agile, they were talking about their new collaboration platform, which they have on their community site, which actually has a lot of templates and a virtual room setting where you can launch an art or do API planning using their platform. And I've seen a lot of partners, trainers also using that platform to do, for example, leading safe training. Up until now, a lot of us were using Mira or Mural as virtual whiteboards, but Scaled Agile is offering their own solution now as well.
Yeah,
so
and I think that ties into nicely what we're doing and what we're offering as far as the Targetprocess solution. I mean, we can really piece together all of those different aspects of SAFe and provide that higher level visibility that a lot of our customers are missing out on. So in collaboration with our partners and the consulting work they do, I think it kind of ties nicely together as one holistic solution, both on the consulting side and on the tool side.
Correct. We lately got a few requests from our partners if they could use Targetprocess as part of their trainings and how to use it best. For example, during the PI planning simulation, which is part of a lot of their SAFe trainings.
Absolutely.
So that is
another quick interesting point that I noticed is that a lot of these companies had to shift. So companies that are now 100% remote, being at home and trying to get teams kind of on the same page, and kind of reset their strategy. Our consulting partners really had to shift and support these clients in a remote way. Consulting, as you know, Urian's not always easy to do remotely, but we're starting to see these companies invest more heavily into more transformation work and getting aligned, because I think moving into 2021, it's really going to be an important aspect of their business if they want to remain competitive in the market and refine how they're scaling.
Yeah, there was one talk about launching an art during the pandemic, where this company, they had everything prepared to do a face-to-face real-life art launch. They booked hotel conference rooms and everything, and then COVID happened, and of course they canceled the hotel room. But then they said, okay, but we still went on. We took the sunk costs and still went on and changed our plans to still do it. So for example, they changed their standard PI planning, which usually takes 2 days. They changed it to 3 or 4 days, because you have a lot more communications difficulties when you're doing a remote. You have a lot more distractions. You have people working with maybe not so stable internet connection, so everything takes longer and you need to facilitate more. They were talking about having SPC, having a coach, having helper SPCs on it, just to make sure that everything worked well. But they still moved on. Very, very cool.
And that kind of leads us to our next topic, remote PI planning and teamwork. Can each of you discuss what you saw at the summit as far as teams getting more serious about aligning the business with more remote PI planning and how Targetprocess handles that?
Yeah, that was a big one, and we'll go over some of that in the demonstration as well. But really, the team's abilities to go ahead and actually do different types of things remotely, whether it be a remote program board, being able to easily differentiate or do weighted shortest job first as a collaborative effort across the teams, even something in even a higher level for participatory budgeting, and then being able to do like a confidence vote and communicate across the teams. Those are all areas that we, I heard teams were struggling with. It certainly is not as easy when you're not all in the same room, and even if you are in the same room, I mean, having an easier way to do to capture and understand what the will of the teams are when we do something like a confidence vote is important. And I also think communicating and being able to connect to the different teams instead of getting up and walking from table to table, being able to remotely do that and have it be seamless or as easy to communicate as it would be just yelling across the room can be very helpful as well.
Yes, correct. You saw that there were a couple of sessions about different tool vendors providing solutions for making the remote work as close to real life work as possible. Because you see a lot of the teams struggling with their current team tooling to keep up with the remote working, especially when you have PI planning meetings or other collaborative meetings. Then just having your standard tool and a Zoom session or WebEx session just doesn't cut it. So you need modern ways of doing that.
Absolutely. And I don't know if everyone knows this, but Targetprocess internally, we do our own PI planning and we do it inside our solution. So it's interesting to see kind of the different teams and how they like to collaborate, within our instance of Targetprocess. That kind of leads us into our next topic, which is around third-party team tool integrations. I know that it's been a huge topic for us this year as we work with more team level tools. Mark and Uriam, what do you guys have to add around how we're supporting customers with their different tool sets in the market?
Okay, let me start. First, before COVID, it started as a scaling problem. So we have some teams working in their team level tools. Now they want to work together and we need to scale, and that there was not a lot of good solutions to be able to do that. But then of course COVID came and everything needed to be remote. So this got accelerated a lot to be able to collaborate more and not stay in your own team silos. So that is where your integration with team level tools becomes a lot more important suddenly. And I think that at Targetprocess we were just in time to understand that and to make sure that we can work with existing tools on team level, not having necessarily to replace them to get the value from using Targetprocess. Mark, did any of the customers you talked to during the summit have questions about it?
Yeah, so I get a couple of the key ones that that I heard we had direct conversations with were really around Jira and Azure DevOps and some level. So they're using Jira. Maybe they have 500 Jira team members, and then but they're they're struggling either with the Jira portfolio plugin or other plugins that they need to do to use Jira, or they've looked at other types of ways to scale that, or even in Azure DevOps they've got different types of teams with different fields, and they were struggling to bring that all together. So a lot of the discussions that I had with some of the customers were really around how can we do that more smoothly? how can we let the teams do their work where they need to do them in Jira or in Azure DevOps, and then scale all of that up. So it's a big challenge still, because some of the tools that are out there like Jira really weren't built as a platform to scale. And that's why they acquired Agile Craft, and they have Jira Align now, or there might be some other options that are out there. But it's always about how do we fix the flaws that we might have from a scaling perspective when it comes to a tool like Azure or Jira. So I think we can show some of that as part of the demonstration here today, or we have some of those answers already resolved. But I think that those are some of the key things of, we want the teams to do the work where they do them in a team tool, but we also need to be able to consolidate that across multiple instances or multiple projects across those teams. And it's always a struggle. It's been a struggle since I think Jira started as an issue tracking tool as well.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I heard Dean say that in order to scale, you really need to be focused on organizing your teams around value. Let's shift gears and talk about, value stream management and DevSecOps a little bit, and what you guys noticed from the summit.
Yeah, and there were a couple of sessions around value streams and making security a first-class citizen as part of your DevOps. So they now call it, or sometimes call it DevSecOps, to really show that security should be an integral part of your DevOps cycle, which is of course a part of your whole value stream. And that is of course also where you need to integrate with every aspect of your value chain to see where your bottlenecks are. So you have to do systems thinking across your whole value stream. And of course, to do that, you need to get data. So you need to integrate with every part of your value stream, get insights, and then see where are we losing time or losing something else, and where is the bottleneck then, and what do we need to improve to change that. So value stream management solutions, they got a lot more traction on that as well.
Yeah, good point. What about you, Mark?
Yeah, I think it's always important to look to have the end in mind, and see kind of what is at the end of the delivery cycle there, and be able to track that. For some of the things I know that we learn from SAFE as a partner, and as we work with them, is they're really focusing on that ability to show where that value is, to be able to do metrics and visibility into that. And I think the types of tools that I think are out there that are doing a better job of it are the ones that have the ability to show that from a visual standpoint, to be able to show where you have and group together your builds and your packages, be able to easily integrate those in with your CI/CD tools, and then really show to senior leaders or anyone in your organization where you have that specific ability to show the value being delivered and where it is, and also then be able to make sure that you're on track to hit your key results. So for me, it's full circle. So I like to see the value delivered tie back into my key results and my objectives that we're doing in our strategic themes. So closing that loop and being able to show that full circle is very important. So when you have your objectives and your key results in the same spot that you have your value delivery and your CI/CD results, you can much more easily mirror those two together.
Yes.
And that's a perfect. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Jurien. Do you have any additional?
I was going to say that's indeed a perfect step into the next topic, which is about OKRs and objectives. There was a talk about SMART objectives, where the standard abbreviation for SMART is something like specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And then they came up with an improved version of that related to objectives, and they said they should be strategic, meaningful, accessible, rewarding, and trackable. And they now in SAFE, they are aligning the OKRs or the strategic themes with key results with OKRs on different levels. So there was a talk about strategic OKRs and tactical OKRs, and then aligning those, for example, your feature benefit hypothesis to your key results, and of course also making them measurable, which ties into the previous topic about getting the data from everywhere within your value chain, but also from your customers, to see are we actually hitting the strategic outcomes that we plan to reach.
Perfect. Yeah, that dovetails nicely into our last topic of today. So Mark and I heard a lot about participatory budgeting and LPM while we were at the summit. We actually had a couple discussions with partners beforehand that showed us, how it works and how they teach it within their training. Mark, can you talk a little bit about participatory budgeting and some of the new things that we're seeing with SAFE?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's been a topic that actually has come up a lot with some of our customers as well, and it's really about how can we, bring more people into the budgeting process? How can we get other ideas, not just a senior set of leaders, but can we get more people involved in allocating the budget that we have? And then once that budget is been planned or allocated out or even suggested, then can we use those numbers then to drive what we're going to do for the future planning? So I know Dean talked about a little bit, and we actually had a one-on-one meeting with Dean as well, where we discussed that in a little bit more detail. And he really stressed the inclusion part of that, where bringing in more people into the budgeting process can make the budget better, because you're not just looking at one set of ideas or one set of data, but having multiple different views of that same budget can then help create a better overall plan, because you may have if you're looking at things from multiple different angles and directions, it gives you a better understanding of why this idea might be more valuable or better to budget in than another idea. And it also allows you to limit exactly what each individual organization, part of the organization has, and force them to help basically say this is how much we want to spend to do a certain component, and then we want to spend the rest of it in another area. So that really helps to frame the conversation around the budget process.
Yeah, I liked a lot what Dean was telling in that conversation, that you say, okay, you give your different parts of the organization, you give them some budget as part of this participatory budgeting. Everybody has money budget to do something, but no one has money to do everything. So you basically force people to start collaborating and start adjusting their common views on delivering value together. So that was a very nice thing that I picked up from that conversation. There was a talk about what maybe upcoming changes are coming to a next version of the SAFE framework, and participatory budgeting was mentioned there as well, that they will put it in as a default lean budgeting spot on the portfolio level in a next SAFE version probably. One thing that also was interesting from that same session, it's not completely related, but maybe nice to mention, is that since the program level disappeared and it basically got merged with team level into essential, the whole name for PI planning, like program increment planning, doesn't make so much sense anymore, because there's no program level anymore, and program is a lot associated with traditional project management. So they were thinking about renaming it to planning interval instead of program increment. So that was quite interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. I didn't hear that, so learned something new today. Let's go back to our agenda and kind of shift gears. I think we're ready to show you a quick target process solution summary and how we support some of these topics that we discussed today. Mark, are you ready to go?
I am. Let me just switch over and be, let's see, make myself the presenter. Yeah. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk through, a few of these key areas, and we'll be able to show in the solution how we can address some of that. Let me find my record here and make myself presenter. I've been doing Zoom for so long, it's hard for me to remember how to do the GoToMeeting here sometimes. So screen 2. Can you see the safe plan here?
Yep, looks
Okay,
good.
awesome. Okay, so okay, what I'm gonna start with is a little bit of that participatory budgeting idea. So when you go into lean portfolio management, it takes you into, and you can see different events. When we talked with Dean, he talked about this participatory budgeting area here, and how this is maybe done every other PI. So maybe you do that twice a year. Some organizations I work with maybe only do that one time a year. And what that really entails is for us to get together with the organization to set a budget limit and how much we want to budget, and then maybe organize that, and organize the teams into groups, and then be able to group that work into a budget. So we can allocate that budget. So here, this is an example of Targetprocess. Inside of Targetprocess, I'm looking at a specific dashboard here, and you can see how we've organized these groups in here on the left-hand side with certain views and specifics. So what we've done is we've allocated a specific budget for each of the different release trains. And one of the ways that we can do budgeting here from a participatory standpoint is we can go ahead and allocate budget for different groups. So here I've got the core banking group, and this is what they've allocated to a specific capability. So in this case, we've set these as the topics that we want everyone to go ahead and vote on. And then I've got 3 different groups now that have already allocated some of their money for the next quarter, for the next 6 months, or the next year, in this case $400,000, into the specific budget area. So if I was another team, I wanted to add my budget in here, I could come right in here and I could simply go, let's call this the loan origination team, and I'm gonna put, let's say, $100,000 into that, and I'm going to assign it to my group. So again, I'm in the loan origination group, and this is one way where I can allocate specific money into this specific capability that I think we want to go ahead and do. So when I add that in, you can see we kick in some automation rules where we update the name. You can see it's $100,000. And then the budget amount and the amount that we're showing here that for participatory budgeting got updated in here as well. So now we've added to this specific capability, and we can track and see how well we're doing for that specific capability. And what this is a budget record here that we can allocate for that, and then each of the teams can go ahead and see how much they've allocated, and we can show that in a couple of different ways. On the right-hand side, we're showing the overall allocation, and we can look at the top epics or capabilities here that we've allocated. We can see that here in terms of a report this way, or we can group them together. We can see that on a budget planning area. So I've got credit check, which is one group, and this is how they voted. We can sort these different ways, but this is how the credit check looked. This is how the loan origination team has voted, and this is how the core banking team has voted. And then we can go ahead and look at those groups of data. We can decide what's the best way for us to go ahead and see what that is, or the ways we should be working on that. So if I open up here, I can see how much I've as the credit check team, how much we've gone ahead and put it here in this specific area, and then you can also track and compare that to other other groups. So here's the loan origination said it was 800,000, credit check said it was 300,000. So now we can decide maybe we should do this or not. We know that by looking at the previous dashboard view that it's the highest level one that we want to go ahead and do. So it looks like detailed views is definitely one that we want to go ahead and work on, because we can see that here in our participatory budgeting. So just one way to look at that and track the details in there. Again, this is the budget allocation. A thing I like about the Targetprocess dashboards themselves, though, is you can actually easily update and add new reports and details onto here. So if you have a specific report or something that you want to add on here, you simply drag it over and drop it onto a dashboard. So I can build out these reports very easily simply by updating the details of what it means for me to do my budgeting, and we can track the details around that. So it helps me to really easily build out what my budgeting process is, and then track the details of that. So Yuri, anything else to add on that? Otherwise, we'll jump into a few other topics here.
No, I think that was perfect.
All right. Again, another big area is really to be able to track those budgets at a high level. Here's my budget allocation work. So I can use value stream specific budgeting, and we can allocate different work to value stream budgets, and then we can track underneath there the various different program increments and how much we want to, we're going to align to those. So these are the percentages that we put on those budgets. You can see how much we've allocated to them. So when we get ready for our participatory budgeting, we want to look at that from a quarterly perspective and align it to our value streams. We can go ahead and do that here by aligning the budgets and the value streams in that way. So Targetprocess is flexible, so you can set these up in different ways that you want. So here's consumer loans with my release trains underneath there, and we can do our budgeting this way, or we can do it by product or other area by portfolio. It's very flexible in that way. When we're talking about strategic themes and we want to look at the specific themes budgeting and our ability to track what's going on from a theme perspective, this is another way that you can organize that work. So here I'm looking at a list of my themes, my big strategic themes for this organization. Each of these is set up here. We're using the strategic objective entity here for that. And then under that, we've got our key results, and then we can see which initiatives and epics are aligned to that as well. So if I open up the details page for this big strategic objective, you can see how well that's aligned in terms of my key results and how well we're doing from a start, a target, and a current value of that. Now these values can be manually entered in here, or we can use automation rules and we can add to those values using our automation rules. In addition to that, you can create your own fields or use our existing custom fields that we have for these OKRs, so we can track actual costs, our planned investment, our projected costs, and our approved budgets. So from a strategic theme perspective and our ability to track and manage what's going on there, lots of options there. But this is one of the things that we showed a lot at the SAFE Summit as well. So we could track and see where we're going from these budget perspectives and be able to align the key results to what's going on from an end view perspective.
And also to get this data in from external toolings or from questionnaires if you have them, to start measuring your progress on key results.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and another way we like to show kind of the end result of that, or really what's finally been delivered, is looking at this type of results monitoring. So if we're talking about Net Promoter Score, and you want to see how well you've been doing for Net Promoter Score over time, if that's one of your big OKRs, you can track that using those measurements and those results, and you can bring them in from third-party tools, or you can just put them in here into Targetprocess. So this is showing results for Net Promoter Score, for value delivered, for performance, for utilization. So lots of different ways that you can show end results. And then we also have our market rhythms view of this as well, which can show me how well we've been doing over time in terms of our sales numbers, and you can track those market rhythms here as well. So again, these are all the different types of results that you can see because we've aligned that work back to our OKRs, and we can track that that work from the budgeting perspective, from the delivery perspective here, from results, and see just overall what's going on for our teams. Another one that came up, I know people are asking about those health metrics and our ability to track those details. So I pulled a couple of these surveys off of the SAFE site. So when you go to the SAFE metrics, you can see where you have different health assessments. We showed this one to Dean as well when we were walking through that. But basically, each team can come in and put their own health metrics or health assessments in here, and then you can bring those right onto this dashboard. So here we're looking at our DevOps health assessment, and we can see that we're strong in learning, we're strong in collaboration, but we need to work on our deployment and our stage areas. So every quarter, every 6 months, every year, we have our team go in and we actually take this assessment. So you can click right on this link, go in and take the assessment, and then we can see exactly where we are from an agility standpoint, and do we need to improve, and where do we want to focus maybe some of our areas as we go to do our planning into those specific areas. Same thing with business agility. So, where are we strong? Where do we think we need to improve? Maybe it's under the team and technical agility. So we can spend more time building out our training and our learning program, because we know that, again, and we also have the visibility right here into the same solution where we do our execution. We can also look at the summary of that. This is just showing me the summary of all those scores. And then again, another view of the metrics down here below. So I think it's really important at any point to take that health check to understand where you are and then bring in those metrics, whether you're doing them, inside a target process or you're using a third-party tool or a survey. This one happens to use just a Google sheet, and I can bring in that information and easily populate that into this survey here. So it's, again, it doesn't matter exactly which way you go ahead and do these assessments and add them in, but it's easy for you to go ahead and track and manage them here. Okay, so from a solution standpoint, this is another big discussion that we had with a lot of our teams is kind of what is the structure of target process. So here we have, we can do different levels of structure. So there's portfolio, epic, feature, story. We support all of the different components of SAFE, whether that be solution trains or just using regular agile release trains, doing OKRs and having different levels of OKRs. Bringing in inspect and adapt models with retrospective. So it really is a full end-to-end solution, finishing up with our release management with packages and builds. So, so this was another good topic that we had at the summit, where people were asking us how much do you support of SAFE, and can you do that standalone? And the short answer is yes. We can do that standalone, but we can also integrate in with other team solutions as well. So if we look at integrations, typically we'll do a bi-directional synchronization between target process features and maybe ADO epics or JIRA epics, and then we can also link the stories and the work either one directional or bi-directional between target process and something like JIRA or ADO. So again, we have this integration, and I can show you that quickly here as well, how that works. But again, there's lots of different ways to configure this and set it up. But this is just one example of some of the high-level modeling that we can do. And then you can also create your own reports, dashboards, and roadmaps, and so forth, using all of these different types of entities. So, so with that, I just want to quickly show kind of how that integration can work here. I've got a quick example of that because that came up at the sessions last week as well. So here's an example of the different different features that I have, and you can see we're already synchronizing a lot of these features already with JIRA. In this case, we've done a mapping between target process and JIRA. So I do a new JIRA feature here, and I can create that. Now, the way the synchronization works is we align to our project to a JIRA project, or we can use other fields like team and other entity aspects of that. Once you go ahead and do that, when I open up the record here in target process, we can define which of these fields we want to go ahead and synchronize. Which elements of this we want to go ahead and make sure to go over to JIRA. So we want to make sure that we definitely put in the description, and we'll go ahead and put that in and say done there. We also want to go ahead and synchronize something like maybe the comments field. So this is a new comment, and I'll just go ahead and do it like that. So we can add comments, descriptions, any other fields. And you can see on the right-hand side here, we've got our synchronized work. So here we've already synchronized the work, and we have an external ID here, which will allow me to go over and see what's going on in JIRA. So if I go into this link now, it'll take me into the JIRA record. Here I have my feature. You can see the description with my misspellings in here. So here's where we define if it's going to be a one-directional or a bi-directional sync. So again, we can make this single directional or bi-directional, and you can define which fields actually are going to be synchronized between target process and JIRA as well. So you can see I've got my comment already added in here. The description came over, the record came over itself. And typically what will happen here is the teams will do their work. So we want the teams to do their work here in JIRA. So we'll go ahead and add a user story here. And then I can open up the details page for the user story in JIRA. In here, we're going to go ahead and assign, say, a person. So I'll make this assigned to Nadia. We can go ahead and do prioritizations if we want to synchronize the prioritization of this. We can also update our story points in here. So we'll make this a 5-point story. We can also add a description. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, as part of the integration, you define which of these fields and which of these values you want to synchronize. So in this case, we've said description, maybe the assignee, and some of this other detail is going to be assigned there and synchronized over to target process. Here's the link to target process now. So this takes me back into my target process entity link. So I can use that to go ahead and go back into target process. or I can just go back into my feature here. Let me go back to my feature. Sorry, I went the wrong way. So now I come back to this feature that I created in Targetprocess. You can see the description was updated already via the integration. And I can go into my user story now and we can see the details on this user story. So here, if I open up the details page for the user story, you can see that I've got it assigned to Nadia now. The number of points are assigned. We've gone ahead and updated the description. So the teams will do all of their work in Jira. They'll go ahead and update the details in there. That's going to roll up back into my feature and ultimately up into the planning that I did as part of my PI planning. So that's some of the ways we can synchronize the work between something like Jira or Azure DevOps back into Targetprocess. Again, I'd encourage you, if there are any questions along the way, please feel free to ask them. And what I'm going to do now is focus a little bit on that PI planning event. So there's a couple of things that came up as part of the planning that we can do. And I want to cover just a couple of those and then walk through the end PI planning. And then I'll show you at the end some of the DevOps components that we can do as well. So the first thing under PI planning is we may have different scenarios that we want to go ahead and plan. So in here, you can create new plans. And again, this won't be a final plan until you decide you want to go ahead and use that. But in here, we can set up a different plans for my program increment, say, to go ahead and plan out. I'll select a specific program increment, and we can say we want to create a plan on my epics. So I want to plan out the epics and be able to organize those epics a certain way in here. You can filter this plan, and then ultimately the whole idea of this plan is to say, show me a good working view of this plan so I can say if this is how I want to go ahead and organize my work. So when you set up that plan, in this case, we've got a series of features here that we want to see. In here, you can align the various different capacities for the different teams and assign work to those various different teams. So in this case, I can assign work to the Lone Wolves team, which if you see up here at the top, it says I've got 72 points available, but I've already assigned 63 points to this specific team. So we can then assign more work. I can assign some points here to this specific team. Let me give them 5 points here. I'll take the 10 off of this team, and then we'll go ahead and add that here. So it split the work between the Checkers team and the Lone Wolves team. So we're basically assigning this feature to those specific teams and saying, what would that look like if we went ahead and assign that work to those specific teams? We might do that for more of the features down here until we decide that we have all of the features assigned that we want to go ahead and do for this specific program increment, and then we'll calculate a schedule for that work. So when I calculate a schedule, that's going to allow me to see the roadmap view of this, and I can see how the work would align on a specific roadmap. Now I can do this multiple times and compare those roadmaps one to another, and we can decide if we want to go ahead and apply those changes. And if I click here on apply these changes, that's going to take this work and set the beginning and end dates for all of these features, assign them to the right teams, and put the right demand on those specific teams so that we can see exactly how those teams, we can actually communicate that out to the organization in terms of this is the plan that we want to go ahead and execute on. So this is just one of the ways we can use our what if capacity planning and our planner to go ahead and do that. This is something that we're currently updating and always adding to as well. So there's some great stuff in here that we can do in terms of our ability to plan and manage this work. And it's a great way to do some of that what if capacity planning. A couple of other views that we can see. Again, this one shows me as we're getting ready to do our PI plan, where are we in terms of team cycle time, the type of allocation of story points we've done over time. And we can look at that a couple of different ways. We can look at it by team and see how many points we've allocated to those teams. We can look at that effort allocation by work type and say how much work have we done under our business, our enablers, and our tech debt. So we can look at that and really allow us to decide as we go into this PI plan, what is the correct percentage of work for tech debt, for instance, that we want to go ahead and try to tackle. So we can see how we've done in the past, and we can decide, is this next PI going to be heavily focused on tech debt, or should we really work on our enablers or our business work? So it's a great way to set some of that conversation and have that understanding. You can track the progress of that work as well as the burn up of that, or you can look at burn down versions of that as well. So as we look at where we've been or where we're going, lots of ways to track in Targetprocess kind of some of the ability for us to see all of that work. From a planning standpoint, if we want to go ahead and check, are we ready to go? One of the things we want to do is make sure that, for our features, we have our weighted shortest job first calculated, and we can do that by adding time criticality, business value, and risk reduction. When we divide that by job size, that calculates our weighted shortest job first score, and then we can decide which of these we want to go ahead and move into our PI. So we can mass bulk edit multiples of these and move those into our PI, or we can move them individually into a specific program increment. So you can see which ones are already there. We can go ahead and assign these to a specific program increment. That's one way to make sure that we have the right features planned, that this is our top 10 list of features, and we want to go ahead and execute on that. When we look at our scheduling of that, we can see the different program increments that we have. We can also, auto update, say, the team sprints as we set up a new program increment. It becomes very easy for us to add new details in there for our program increments. The teams then could see their specific sprint cadences. So again, this is showing me all of my teams and all my sprint cadences. The way Targetprocess works is you can easily filter for a specific team and say, just show me, say, the ones for checkers and bankers dozen, so we can compare those two, and you can track team cadences across any teams that you want to see. So we can look at all those sprint cadences. We can also filter just down into the weeks that we care about here, so we can see specifically what's going on for those team sprints and those team cadences. So what we've done is we planned our features. We've said these are the top 10 features for our PI planning. We want to go ahead and review that plan. So we might start by looking at the dependencies we have on those plans. So here's an example of my program board. In this case, we've got all of the work. We can track where our dependencies are for that program board. In this case, here's a feature, and I want to say that I have a dependency on that feature, so we can align that feature here to this dependency. We'll call it a blocker, and it automatically sets up that blocker for me. This indicator here is showing me where I have upstream and downstream, incoming and outgoing dependencies, so we can see exactly where my feature is there and which ones we want to go ahead and focus in on. If we want, we can actually highlight some of these, and we can focus in on them using the zoom in feature here, so we can focus just specifically on those teams, which is really helpful for having a review of this data. It's another great thing in terms of the remote planning and our ability to see exactly what's going on, as we can focus in on specific teams and where we have dependencies across those specific teams. In here as well, we can look at, say, the team iterations and the sprints. We can track exactly what's going on for those. We can even move work along on this board, so it's very interactive. You can move things back and forth. Once you've got your dependencies set, the teams know the work that they want to do. We want to evaluate our risks. So you can have program risks and team risks inside of Targetprocess. Here we've set up our new risks, so we can add very easily into here. So this is another new risk. You can set the levels. You can make these team or program specific. So I can create a new program risk in here and add that in for the lone wolves team. And then we can decide how we're going to resolve, own, accept, or mitigate that risk. So you can set that up in here, and you can even create dependencies across those risks if you have them. So maybe, one specific risk and another risk might be dependent on each other. So you can track and see and manage all of those risks across that. So whether it be the WSJIP weighted shortest job first, our ability to pick out which features we're going to build, track those, have the teams do their planning, do their program board or program risks. Those are some of the key things that we talked about in terms of PI planning. The last one is our ability to do a competence vote. So, so this is something that you can actually set up for your program increment. You can provide this to your teams in terms of a link that they can go onto their handheld device, or they can use their computer or their tablet, and then each team member can vote on this. So after we've reviewed what's in our PI5, we can go back and we can vote on that. So here I'm going to have each team member go in and vote. They can also re-vote if they want to go ahead and change their vote before we lock down the votes. If they vote a 1 or a 2, they can say, because they can give a reason why they voted a certain way, and they can go ahead and submit that reason. Once we lock the voting down, you can see who voted, and you can actually measure that, and we can actually use this to review all of those results, and we can go back and track that. We can also then make sure that we're ready to move forward. So that really closes out our ability to do the PI planning and walk through all of the details there for that. From a breakout perspective, again, teams can have their own objectives. They can have their own details in there. Ultimately, we want the teams to go ahead and put in their plan and their business value. So as the teams are doing their objectives, and we walk around for the PI planning, we'll have a planned business value when we set up those team objectives, and then we can use program predictability to track how well we're doing for those various different scores. The business will come back and give us this actual business value when we're done, and that'll allow us to really predict how well the teams have done in terms of achieving these specific objectives. So really anything in the PI planning cycle from beginning to end is something that we have either built in or that we can adapt to your process if you're looking at doing a PI planning event. And finally, I'll just finish up by looking at Devops metrics, and then we'll have a few minutes here for questions. So from a DevOps perspective, as we're looking at a DevOps metrics and how we can track the work, a couple of different things that we have. So Targetprocess has releases and builds that we can align to. So in this case, I've got my releases and the builds that we're tracking to. Here are the different environments that those builds are in, so I can see which builds are in staging for this specific release. So we can track multiple builds in a release, or you could have a single build or a single release, depending upon how you do things. Each of these builds would represent the features and the stories that we're deploying, so we can track all of that work. We can synchronize that to our source control solutions, GitHub, GitLab, or Bitbucket, whatever you're using, and then we can automate that data coming back in. So when you do a merge build or you're doing something else for your pipeline, we can then reflect that back here on this build or on this package. That'll also allow us to track how long it's taken us to get things through these environments, so we can measure the different builds as items move through the environments and track how long it took us to go into production, into pre-production and staging. So you can measure all of that. As you get into production and we deploy this work, you're then able to see the trending for the incidents or the tickets, so we can track tickets across these builds and align them to that, as well as do measurements like releases per PI and how well are we doing in terms of getting those releases out the door. So that's just a couple of the types of views that we can do from a DevOps perspective to allow us to see exactly what's going on there. Again, another example here of just taking those builds and putting them onto a pipeline, so we can see exactly where we are here from a pipeline perspective and track what's going on. Here's the stuff that's in staging, in pre-production, production, so we can monitor and watch this. These can be automatically moved, or we can manually move them in as we want to go ahead and update them. But if you're using a deployment tool, we can monitor this, bring in the deployments of that, and track exactly what's going on there from an end deployment standpoint. So that's just a couple of the components there on the DevOps side. I'll finish by coming back to my end results, which is kind of where we started at the very beginning. So whether you're tracking internally how well you're doing from an agility standpoint, you're measuring your health agility, to maybe looking at your performance monitoring and seeing how well you've done in terms of your deployments and performance for your overall system, and tracking that, to looking at something like a utilization and being able to track your overall utilization of the work after you've done your deployments. Really, Targetprocess allows a lot of different ways to track and measure and manage that. So lots of different ways to synchronize that in and align it. I think that covered most of the areas that I wanted to go through today. So we looked at a couple of different things in terms of how we can support the scale framework, but really it's about tailoring your process and the way you're using specific tools to the safe framework, of using the right metrics to go ahead and track those details, being able to make sure that as you're looking at aligning the work, that you can go ahead and organize that, and really use a solution like Targetprocess for your visualizations and your ability to roll all that information up to a higher level. So with that, Nick, I'll hand it back over to you and see if there are any specific questions or anything else, Yuri, and maybe that I didn't cover that you wanted me to show.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say thanks, Mark. Yeah, that was a very good demo. I wanted to ask the audience if you want to be unmuted and chime in to ask any questions, or if you have anything to say, please raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Otherwise, go ahead, Urian.
No, I was just also answering the question of Mark if he missed anything. I was waiting for the confidence vote, but yeah, you showed that, so that's perfect.
Sounds good. And it doesn't look like we have any questions coming in, so I think we can go ahead and wrap it up. Just want to say thanks everyone for joining us today, and the recording will be available. So if you have any additional follow-up questions, let us know and we'll get back to you. Have a great day.